Agriculture is Uganda's economic backbone, with more than 74% of the population engaged in crop production activities from which they earn income and food security. The farmers in the rural villages have for many years produced and relied on food crops for household consumption, and only little goes to the market just to meet the daily needs, thereby not being conscious about market requirements and earning little from the sector. But with the new market opportunities, such as common market for agricultural produce in the East African community, there is now need to adhere to market requirements such as quality standards to improve returns from the sector. The East African community established harmonized regional standards for agricultural products to guide producers and traders on how to deal with the expected quality for products like maize and beans for the East African Common Market. The market was created way back in 2010 with lots of trade opportunities, especially in the area of agriculture trade. But what are these required standards? The Uganda National Bureau of Standards says in the case of maize, for example, the maize seed must be contaminant-free, no molds, no lead, and no defected grains. And when planting, the seed must be well selected. There must be good post-harvest handling and transportation of the produce.
So standards specify those characteristics which are expected of the products to be safe and to be of good quality. So in standards we write characteristics of products that affect safety, and we set limits for those characteristics that would otherwise lead to lack of safety. And then the other thing is that we set those characteristics that are defined for quality of the product. That is what the consumer will be looking for. And then we set limits that beyond this limit, then the product will not be called a quality product. David
Eboku, the Manager Standards Development Department, UNBS, says a farmer dealing in maize business must understand the issue of safety and quality first when it comes to standards.
In Uganda, of course, we don't have quite a lot of that, but generally it is possible. People spray and so on. So there are limits to which can be tolerated, knowing that there will always be some residues. So the standards set the limits for pesticide residues in the food. There are also other contaminants which could be in the soils and so on. For example, heavy metal contamination, lead, for example. And you would know that if somebody cultivated maize in the roads or near in industrial area.
It is for this reason that Seatini, Uganda, a civil society organization working on the issues of trade policy, decided to air out the challenges facing value chain actors in meeting standards, especially on maize, in an effort to find solutions.
Uganda as a country has been known for producing poor quality maize. Our maize is not meeting the East African community standards. There was a case, for example, in 2013 where Tanzania rejected up to 1,000 metric tons of maize from Uganda because of being substandard. There are a lot of challenges on the ground in terms of meeting standards.
One of the key challenges is the lack of awareness amongst value chain actors, which has been as a result of information gaps between the standards setting agencies and actual implementers on the ground, where the practices do not satisfy the standards. Some farmers harvest immature maize and have poor drying methods, which contaminate the maize grain.
Farmers harvesting maize while it is still immature, poor drying techniques. You have farmers spraying maize to make it dry faster in order to meet good market prices, which also in turn affects health issues. We are having poor storage techniques where maize is just thrown on the ground. Yes. Farmers are sleeping on the maize.
What we are talking about when we are saying we are setting standards for maize. It is to understand that it's coming from a farm, it's coming from the soil, it's coming from the garden, and it's being handled at different levels, and it's likely to come with all that.
David Eboku says Uganda's maize is currently faced with the biggest challenge of macrotoxins due to poor handling of the grain, the weather, the inability of the farmer to dry the maize and the inability of the middlemen to transport the grain in a good, acceptable manner.
Our challenge is just on the handling of the grains. And if you don't handle the grain properly, then you cannot meet standards. Because you cannot meet the standards for the product. That's what I should say. Because handling itself is already a failure in meeting the standards for handling.
But the failure by Ugandan producers and traders to meet the required standards is indeed a worrying matter, as the country's produce may face rejection on the market.
If you fail to meet standards, you may not be able to access the markets in the East African community. Even in cases where you can be able to access markets, you get a very low price. However, the challenge that we have now is that farmers are not rewarded. They are not rewarded for meeting standards. And this is an issue that Seatini is going to be campaigning for, advocating for, the need to reward standards. That if someone produces a high quality product, they should get more than someone who is engaged in poor practices, poor handling.
However, Uganda has lots of opportunities in agricultural trade in the East African community market and boasts of her 2 seasons of maize, which has a high demand in the region. But despite the potential and demands, the maize does not meet the required East African community standards. Small-scale farmers in some areas have an idea about issues of quality and identify issues like the quality of seed as being very crucial and important if they are to harvest a better yield.
Kasooli bwe tuba tumusimba tulina okuba n'ensigo ennungi. Naye wano tufunyeemu obuzibu mu nsigo nti waliwo ensigo ezimu ze tufuna nga mu nuts ne tuzifuna ne tuzisiga ne zigaana okumera. Naye ng'emabega tubadde ne kasooli waffe gwe tusinza okusimbako nnyo essira nga ye bwe tumusimba ate tuddamu ne tumusimba ne sizoni endala nga tumwetegekedde ffekka. Pozi tufuna kasooli waffe nga mukalu bulungi ne tukongolako obutono obusemba waggulu na buno obw'ekituli obutula. Kati empeke zino ennamu eza wakati ze tusimba ate tumala kakasanga kasooli oyo wa langi emu.
Tufunye okusomoozebwa kasooli ow'omutindo. Nina okuba nga omutindo gwa kasooli mukalu bulungi nnyo, tumwanze ku matundubaali, tumukongola mukalu nnyo.
Some of the farmers are aware of the need for standards, but implementation is the major challenge coupled with the daily needs.
Traditionally, you see the size of the maize. When it has yielded well, and then that one you select to be the good variety. And then we plant it after getting it right.
Mu kukungula olw'okwagala okukola omutindo tugezaako nnyo okulaba nti kasooli waffe gwe tukungula tatuukako mu ttaka. Bw'oba otambula omunula ng'osuula mu kaveera ne tulyoka tumukuŋŋaanyiza wali amatundubaali.
A cob to be plucked on a harvesting period, at least you should at least pluck a cob which is already dried. When the whole cob just is showing down, that's when you should pluck that your maize is already ready for harvest, when the whole cob is just down.
Lack of simplified information is also a challenge which constrains awareness creation. For example, the District Production Officer Masindi Byabakama Blasto calls for simplified information, saying the farmers have a vague idea on quality but cannot understand the technical language involved in information on standards. The high costs of implements such as tarpaulins needed in meeting standards is another challenge, as well as prevalence of substandard farm implements like hose, in addition to poor storage facilities.
We are financially broke. We don't have enough money to buy the input like fertilizer and some other inputs and a good variety of seeds. And at times you find that even the land is now expired. In most cases, when you plant, you find that the harvest cannot come well.
The problem that I get to everyone is a cross-cut issues. Among them, most of the farmers get. They don't have stores. You will find them, they will sell them in the garden. That is called on-farm sales. Others cannot get the tarpaulins. Eventually you'll find them, they throw it on the ground. They will lose because as someone spill off in the bush or in the weed, he will not manage to pick it.
Singa tufunayo amasitowa ne baba nga bagula kasooli naye tumutunda sente zezimu ne bana abamusaawa nga tannakala n'abamufuuyira weed master ebbeeyi ebeeremu ne bagamba nti kasooli yagwa ebbeeyi yagwa.
The leaders are concerned that farmers continue to face low prices for their maize produce due to poor quality production, a situation that has discouraged them from investing in meeting the required standards. The low incomes from agriculture result in challenges in meeting livelihoods, which also drives them to sell at giveaway prices, especially to the middlemen.
It's now like a surety that he has money, he has produced the other side. So the bank will keep advancing him money. Now when we sell the other side and we have to pay, the only thing is that we have to pay him through the same bank so that the bank is able to recover its money. So that is the advantage.
Baire no nze njagala nnyo tugiyiseere tugenda mu kazi tugenda giyisa n'amaanyi kuba tujagadde nnyo nkitunze mu bantu buli speakidde wembeera nkikoze ku Paris Councils nkikoze abantu ne bakisemba nnyo ne bagamba tugenda ku kyuma ng'otuteeka sooli w'omulungi gwoyanise n'omwanika bulungi bw'otuuka ku kyuma bakuba mu kawunga kalala n'otuuka waka kawunga ne bw'okagoya tekakwata kubanga otika sooli esaawa musaawe oba yafuwa mufuete yamufuira ddagala akale kati gwe n'obeera ng'omutindo gwakuumya awakaawo tosobodde gufuna kuki ne bwe kinabeera at a national level kijja kubanga omuntu ne watwala akasooli ku kyuma takyalina kyeraliikirira.
Another challenge is that a number of farmers engage in dangerous practices such as spraying of immature crops with chemicals to make them dry faster so as to meet better market prices before the bumper harvests. This not only results in poor quality and poor standard produce, but could also cause health hazards to consumers of the produce.
Abamu bwalwala kasooli ng'azzemu obuwuka ng'ali mu nnyumba ng'omu bamutadde balina eddagala lye bakwata ne bamufuuyira mbu obuwuka bufe kyokka ne bamutwala ne bamukola kye ne bamutunda kalebwa abantu ne balwala nga baliddeeyo emmere eriko enfuuyi bo tebafaayo kubanga atagenda muli ayinza okutoolako wegwana alya ono gwagenda okutunda n'amufuuyira mbu obuwuka bukole ki obuwuka ne bufa.
The biggest problem with the maize enterprise, especially quality, starts from the farmer, the household, the farm. And if we are to address this issue of quality and post-harvest losses, we must start from the farm.
Farmers are challenged by costs of production, and yet they face low prices for their produce, which is a disincentive to meeting standards.
To organized farmers, we have got organized farmers, we have got storage facilities with all the necessary facilities that are able to handle the produce. I think the facility we have, the storage capacity we have, can go up to 10,000 tons at a single handling. We are able to fumigate, we are able to clean the grain as when it comes from the farmers, be able to fumigate and be able to store it up to the time when we have appropriate market for it.
The farmers are aware of a crib, which is the basic store for a maize crop. They're aware. But the problem, the challenge now that comes in is that, well, the liberalized market came with, anybody comes and picks. So if you are talking about somebody first putting the maize into the crib so that it dries, shell later, sort it and sell later.
There is need to support farmers who meet standards to access better prices and incentive for compliance. For example, in Masindi district, there have been strides to promote production of quality maize through the warehouse receipt system that helps farmers to better market prices the produce. The system allows the farmer to benefit maximum with very minimal costs for the warehouse and is being encouraged by leaders.
Now how to assist the farmers is that we expect a farmer, a peasant farmer who has produced, to bring his produce to, instead of selling it in the village at the farm gate price of 200, 300 kilograms, because the market price is low, he brings the maize to the warehouse. It is weighed. Then from there it is cleaned. After being cleaned, dried to the right moisture content, and then fumigated or treated to ensure that the pests and diseases are all cleaned, and then thereafter we store it.
The warehouse receipt system allows a farmer to access money from the bank before they sell their produce.
When a farmer brings his produce, he's given a sort of receipt, which receipt spells out the quantity and the value of the produce he has brought at that time. And that one can now be used in the bank. The bank is now capable of giving that person, advancing that person money up to 65% of what that value is. That means if he's hard up, he can always go and use, it's now like a surety.
The system is approved by Ministry of Agriculture to be very supportive to farmers, which they say should be promoted in the whole country. Drying the maize, storing and shelling is another hassle that farmers go through to have their maize produced as quality. At the grinding mills, workers explain the process, saying it involves sorting and sieving.
So kamulaba bwali tutegera babali mama inja basokane bamuteka kwa timba bamulongosa bwe bamala bene tumala tukola chene tumukuba okuba kasoli kyetagisa oba okumwawula nti ono mulungi oba ono mubi naye kasoli wa mulungi n'omubi ojjako omubi n'omuteeka ku pembeni n'osooka n'okuba omulungi then omubi oba omukuba omunyiga nnyo n'alabika nti afulumya akawunga bulungi akooyagala.
Farmers feel that this state of affairs has been made worse by the absence of UNBS on the ground and the lack of capacity of government officials at the grassroots to effectively engage in monitoring and enforcing of standards in the local markets.
What we are looking at is basically creating awareness amongst value chain actors on the standards that are required in the East African community markets, but also building their capacity to be able to meet these standards in terms of the practices they employ throughout the value chains, right from the seed, the type of seed they're supposed to plant, how they should handle maize in the gardens, how they should harvest, how it should be dried and stored, up to the point of sale.